Evolution. Thank you so much for having here and for making time for this. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And more importantly, thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. It's very kind of you. I know you're busy, so thank you
No,
very much.
a big pleasure and honor for us. Thank you so much, Mark. So, normally we ask a couple of personal questions, Mark, so people and the audience know you a bit better. And then later we can go to the most professional and, business related questions. Is that okay?
Sure, go fire away.
All right, good. Mark, you live in Australia, which is one of the places that worldwide many people wants to live and work. Okay, so if I ask you, where would you like to wake up tomorrow? If you could wake up anywhere in the world, what it would be and why?
Oh my goodness, what a what a question. Um, Somewhere in Europe, I think.
Okay,
I think I'd
all
like
right,
to be in Europe.
okay,
Um, I really love Europe, and I haven't been there for a while.
mm,
COVID put an end to that, and we just really haven't got around to getting back into
sure.
it. But I think that'd be pretty cool. And if I want to be specific,
Uh-huh.
I'll go with Italy.
Italy, okay.
Yeah,
Wow. Why?
because I
I'm from Spain,
have
okay?
why?
Italy and Spain, we are always. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I haven't been there for a while. That's one reason.
Mm.
It's not that I think Italy is better than Portugal or France or the UK or anywhere in South America for that matter, but it's just somewhere that I haven't been for a while, and I did enjoy it when I was there. And I've not been there with my wife. I have been to other places with my wife, but not there. So, yeah, I'd like to think
I
Italy.
like Italy. I like Italy. And which part of Italy specifically?
Oh, stop it! Stop it! Uh,
Uh, well,
well,
just for getting
Well,
advice,
I think Rome is great. I think Firenze is
Rome,
great. Assisi
mm,
is probably my favorite place.
Sicily.
Lake Como, I really like. Now,
Uh-huh.
having said that, I have not been to the eastern coast of Italy.
All right.
So many of us tend to be on the Rome side and sort of do that west coast and then go over to the Riviera to France or something. So I
Uh-huh.
think the east coast of Italy. There you
All
go.
right. East coast of Italy.
I've
That's
made a
cool.
decision. I shall, after this call, I shall go out and tell my wife what we're doing.
Okay, and you can send us pictures for the update.
Certainly,
Okay, cool.
certainly.
All right, good. Now, you told me you are not a parent, so I'm going to ask you this one. If I ask you what was your happiest moment so far in your life, Mark, what would you say? Or
Oh
what
my
is the first
goodness.
memory that comes to your mind?
Oh my goodness. I think, well, I don't know why, but I have been doing my ancestry recently
Okay,
after I had my DNA done and a few things like that. So,
that's cool.
so that does raise a few issues. I'm going to go way back to when I was a child. We used to live in the southern parts of Sydney, southern suburbs of Sydney,
Okay.
and we used to go to a national park called the Royal National Park. It was very close to us,
Uh-huh.
and I've just got a flashback of being with my parents there, boiling water over a wooden, making a little fire, boiling water, having a cup of tea, and as kids running through the bush, thinking we were, how wild is this? So
That's so
yeah,
cool.
that's happy. But I'm going to give you another time I'm
Okay.
happy or been
All right.
happy, and that's recently.
Okay.
We've we did a very modest renovation of our house. We live in the inner city of Sydney. Our house was built in 1895, not as old as some of the homes around the world, or a few parts of the UK or other parts of Europe and the
Uh-huh.
Middle East. But uh, we've recently done a few things in our house, and sitting in our backyard at the moment is absolutely delightful. Our backyard faces north, which of course in the southern hemisphere is what you want, or I think that's what you want. Sitting there in the afternoon or even the morning is just delightful. So there you go. I've got
Okay.
two happy times, a young one and
That
an older
sounds
one.
great. That sounds great. All right, thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. And the backyard sounds great for sure.
It's
Very good.
small. It's rather small, but
Yeah, well, it's what you
we
like.
don't need.
It doesn't need to be huge. It just it gives you peace and you feel calm and you feel good. That's enough. That more than you want. Okay, great, Mark. So now, I saw a lot things in your background, right? Your experience about psychology. You are an expert in communication, relationships, and also about pedagogy, right? So I'm interested if you could give me the main lessons learned from all that. What would you pick up? You know?
Oh my goodness, my goodness. I'm going to say something that I actually said the other day to someone when we were talking about teaching and schools.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said to me in 1977, geez, that's a long time ago, perhaps before you were born. Uh, and we were having a discussion about schools and what they look like, the way they're structured as well as physically, but the way the day is structured for kids.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, if we were going to build an education system right now from scratch, it wouldn't look
I love
like
that.
this. It wouldn't
Definitely.
look like this. So that's something I've always remembered about how can we make learning experiences better, not
Mm-hmm.
just for young people, but for mature age students or anyone of any age. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I've learned. Another thing I've learned is things are often more complicated than what people make out. So whether it be on LinkedIn or whether people say, I've learnt this thing about this theory, it's amazing. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, yes, it is. But do you realize there's 30 other theories about that same thing and they're all pretty amazing, but you've decided to choose one. So that might be a personality theory. It might be something about the way the brain works. They're all good, but that's one thing I've learned. These things are more complicated. So when somebody says, oh, the research shows this, one thing I learned from my undergraduate and postgraduate work was, yes, the research does show that, but what is the quality of the research? How
Mm-hmm.
many other bits of research are out there that might complement it or disagree with it? And putting that all together to getting a bigger picture.
Picture.
You can
Mm-hmm.
almost find any bit of research to show anything. Uh, this just comes to mind. I'll say climate change. I don't want to get a debate about climate change, but you can find evidence to show that the Earth is warming. It's not warming. Uh,
It's because of the sun. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
you
saw
just
that.
you can just choose one bit of thing, and that's one thing I learned, that you need to sit back. So quite often when you're writing essays or having debates in tutorials and your seminar groups, you'd always have to say, well, on the one hand there's this, on the other hand there's this, and not only that, you've got to weigh up the quality of that research,
Uh-huh,
because
uh-huh.
this bit of research, might have had 10,000 people over so many years, and this one only had 5 people, and it was anecdotal evidence, not
Mm.
so. That's one thing I think. They're the two things.
I
It's
love it.
always a little more complicated than you just grab at.
Mm. I love it, because this is very in line with my mindset, I think, because we have to be, well, we want to be an open-minded in terms of the knowledge that we are getting, because everything is changing so fast, and we need to relearn, and we need to unlearn many things and learn new things. So thank you for sharing that. And regarding this learning experience, making the learning experience better, what are your main lessons learned? Because this is something that will be very useful for me and for people as well.
Mm. One of the things that I was involved in was helping people develop skills, and I'll throw in something here just to uh, get a bit of debate going. But one of the ways you learn skills is you need to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm interested in is the quality of that practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the one hand, you could have, say, if you're learning communication skills, assertiveness training skills, you could have, for example, what I call old fashioned role plays, which I think have got some major serious problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want people to learn things, you need to place them into an environment which is as close as possible to the real world. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
driving a car, it's nice to have if you're going to have a simulation rather than a real car to learn how to drive a car, it's got to be as realistic as possible, and nothing really beats you going out on the actual road. So
Mm-hmm.
the same with maybe an airline pilot. You have these simulators because no one wants to make mistakes with a real plane. But eventually you've got to go to the real world. So those simulations have to be as real as possible. And I think sometimes they're not. The real world can be a very difficult place. And if you're going to get people to practice their social communication skills, I'm not sure of the right term you might want to use,
Hmm.
that we need to make sure that the environment they're practicing those skills in is as real as possible.
Hmm.
That's something that
That's
I think that's hard.
Yeah, it is very interesting, especially with public speaking and communication. I think because it gets a lot of primitive thoughts about, fear of rejection and also fear of public speaking that I think is very unconscious and that use so many emotions. And that's a very good point. Yeah.
Well, I'll be bold and say that many years ago, a few decades back, when I was working with teenagers, but they were over 18, which means they were legally allowed to go to a hotel, and we were doing work on alcohol education. But it was really about how do you go to a hotel, drink with your friends, and not get into trouble? Because there was no way in the world I was going to stop these people going to a hotel, right? It wasn't, that was silly. It wasn't going to happen, or a
Uh,
licensed venue. So you are going to go. So how can I get them to go, have a good time? They want to flirt, they want to carry on. I get it. But how do you not drink more than you really should be drinking? And how do you, when you get outside, say to someone, I'm not hopping in the car with you because you have been drinking? Now that's big stuff. So that's the skill. And what did I do? We used to do this with a real car,
okay.
hopping into a real car, and we actually went to a hotel. At the end of this, we actually went to a hotel, not to drink alcohol because I thought this is just not going to go down well. But my point being is if you want to make something real, you've got to make it real. If you want to prepare people for the real world, I'm sorry, you've got to be realistic. It's
Mm,
why if you're learning first aid, it's all very nice to do your practice on your friends in the classroom regarding bandages, but gradually you've got to make it more and more real. And if you want to do an advanced first aid course, well, people dress up with blood and whatever because you want to make it as real as possible. So that's what I think that I've learned from
Yeah, no,
the
I
ones I've
think
met.
it's very interesting. It's about also I do this in my modules. It's about the practice, about the tools, and that they making use it in on life. Because I think because if you tell people to do exercise, maybe they don't do it later. So as you probably experienced, so it's better to do them online with their colleagues and all that. So
Yeah,
I think it's useful. Hmm.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And look, information is important, but ultimately people need to practice. But it's what sort of practice
Mm,
is the important. I don't want people to go away from a practice session going, "Oh, that was quite good. That was enjoyable." I do want them to enjoy themselves, but I also want them to say, "Wow, that was
yeah.
pretty tough. That was
Uh-huh.
pretty tough. I handled it," which is what I want them to be able to say. I want them to build. I want to build up their self-esteem. I don't want to destroy their confidence.
Sure.
But they've got to be able to. They've got to be challenged. Maybe that's the word.
It has to be in an optimal range, right? Not too hard,
Yes,
not too easy.
you hit the nail on the head there. That you've got to make it tough enough for people for them to who really work hard, but you don't want to make it so hard they become discouraged.
I like that. I know you are an expert as well in these uncomfortable conversations, right? And I think this is something that is very important because if we don't have this tough conversation at the early stage, sometimes they can explode, right, at later stage. So we want to avoid that, especially in the workplaces and in families and in personal relationships, really, and everywhere, right? So I was thinking, what is your best advice for this particular issue, Mark?
For tough conversations as a whole,
Yes.
wow. Well, I'm going to say something that most people will simply nod to, but they don't realize how significant it is.
Hmm.
And that is people need to stick to the facts. And I can run a workshop and I will say what I'm going to say shortly many times, and people will still think they are saying facts when I think they are not. Someone said recently to me, "Oh, you would just want me to be boring." And I said, "Yes." If you want to say that, that's fine by me. But the facts is what the camera saw. Uh, Bill came in, he leaned over the counter, He picked up the stapler and he threw it at me. That's it, right? That's the facts. What you want to say is Bill came in like an idiot. He was as crazy as anything. He picked up the stapler. I thought he was going to kill me, and he threw it at me like a lunatic. He was mad. He went crazy. That's maybe not a very good example, but
No,
that's what you
I
want
got
to
the
say.
point.
That's what you
I
want to
got the
say.
point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
So,
emotional. You put the emotion and
so
your perspective, and it's
even
subjective.
things like, and I say
Yeah.
saying someone was racist or sexist is not a fact.
Hmm.
It might be true. It might be true, but it's
But
not
you
a
don't
fact
know.
because
And you're not a hundred
well,
percent sure.
as soon as someone says to you they were racist, what do you say? You say,
Mm,
what did they do? It's the first
mm,
thing. What did they do? Because I don't know. What they did was they came in and they called me names. I'm sure they did. What did they actually do? Oh, well, they said blah, blah, blah. I say, okay, now you're right. That is racist, but we're going to get rid of that term and let's just deal with exactly what they said. So that's hard because the English, look, all languages are rich.
mm,
We want to say someone was rude, someone was racist, someone was belligerent, someone was out of control, someone acted like an idiot. This is all true.
mm,
But when you're having a tough conversation, this sort of language does not get you anywhere. You need to stick with the facts because as soon as you start using words like, oh, Peter was belligerent, Peter says, how was I? Or
uh,
what do you mean by that? Or what did I do? What did I do that you think? So you have to explain it anyway.
totally,
So you
totally.
may as well say what happened was, and the less emotion and the more facts. And it is a bit boring and dull because all these other words are quite exciting. But you've got to
Yes,
stay away. So that's the one thing I'd say is the facts.
interesting. Hmm.
It can be boring and dull sometimes, but if you don't stick to the facts, you end up in arguments.
Yeah, yeah, it's important, right? It's getting out of the emotional part and the subjective part, and more
Mhm.
about the real things that happen, and how can we see it like an outside observer instead of being too connected, right? And too
Yeah,
close to the issues.
yeah, and we, and we're emotional. We're emotional beings. We like to say this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's
and when I
right.
say facts, it's not just the emotional stuff. It's we sometimes embellish stories we don't mean to, or we guess. We use our
Mm,
intuition and conjecture. So someone said it once to me. This is what they wanted to say. Oh, Peter, I admire your confidence, but sometimes I think you're overconfident.
mm,
And they said, how's that? I said, I'm, I'm none the wiser what it means. So if you were Peter, you'd say, I'm not overconfident. Then you have to have a discussion about that. Whereas what you really want to say is, today at the staff meeting, Peter, you were rude to the guest presenter.
mm,
What you said was, boom, boom, boom. Here's the facts. Boom, boom, boom. That's not acceptable. I don't want you to say that again.
mm.
But all the other stuff might be true. He might be overconfident, but it just creates debates and discussions, and it's a waste of time.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's very good point. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Mark. I really appreciate it. I wanted to see, because as you know, okay, you have a lot of foundation on psychology as well. And I'm emotional coach, and I'm also studying and teaching these things. So I was wondering, Mark, uh, what is your connection, right? Because there has to be a connection with what we think, with what we do, right, and what we say. So, what did you find that could be the main trigger, for people not to communicate effectively?
I think people don't know. I'm going to use myself as an example. I look. We were talking about emotional. Not. Oh, sorry. We are talking about psychological safety some time ago, and I felt very safe as a young teacher to put my hand up and say what my thoughts and ideas were. I felt very
Mm,
comfortable, but I think I overdid it. I think I was quite rude sometimes. So I think I was just being assertive and expressing myself, but I think in fact, looking back, I think I was rude and unkind. So I think most of the time we don't know. I used to think, and I'm serious about this because I like using myself as an example because I've made lots of mistakes in my life.
Mm,
I used to think people knew, automatically understood I cared about them.
mm,
Then I realized one day they don't unless you actually say stuff to them. Like, hi, how are you? I love the way yesterday you did this for me. I really appreciate it. I thought people understood. So I think we just don't know sometimes what we're saying or not
mm,
saying. And it is about, dare I say, it's education. But somewhere along the line, we need to be exposed to good ways of operating. So I've been working right now with a team of people, and there's two out of the team who think they're terrific. They think they're fine. I shouldn't say they're not up themselves, don't get me wrong. They just think they're fine, right? And they're not. They're arrogant. They don't share resources. They really do have an attitude of I'm fine, and you people can go to hell. so
mhm,
so when I spoke to one of them, and you've got to be really careful because it's not my job to tell people they're doing the wrong thing, but I was talking about things. They came to the realization that they did some things which might annoy other people. And they were shocked. They were honestly shocked at themselves.
mhm.
And so I think people aren't bad people, though I guess there's always some people who are bad people. But but most of the time, people mean well. They think they're doing a good job, and they simply don't realize that they are saying things which are unkind, unhelpful. They're not sharing. They're not honest. They're not.
Uh-huh.
They're not working as a team.
I love it. I love it because it's about lack of awareness, basically, in terms of emotional intelligence and psychology. And I was wondering because you made a good point, right? You don't want to offend them, and you may don't want to be very direct with them. So, how do you deal with that situation, right? What is the best or most effective way that you have found out, Mark, in order to let them realize that?
Yeah, I actually have, like most people, I've got lots of tricks up my sleeve and strategies. And
I want to
we
know
did
this.
an exercise with this group. We did an exercise, and
Uh-huh.
I won't give it to all now because it's too long.
Sure.
But
Sure,
it's
sure.
basically I said to this group of people, look, let's pretend the managers have got me in as an expert researcher, and they've brought me in because they think the team isn't working very well, that people aren't sharing, they're not this, they're not that. They brought me in to investigate. Okay. Now, what would happen if I did investigate? I hang around for 2 weeks. I look at things. I'm looking out of cupboards and watching what people are doing, and I report to the managers that things are perfect. Everything is brilliant. What a fantastic team! This is exemplary. They should be a
Uh,
showcase. What did I see? What did I see actually happen? Now, there's a process now. I don't just ask that to a group of 30 people. There's a process I go through with each person thinking, writing things down, exploring, not brainstorming, but there's a method I have where people put forward these ideas and discuss them and things. So people themselves are quite capable of coming to their own realization of, well, I can remember right now, because it wasn't that long ago, that people said, these are the sorts of things. By the way, I got 30 people to write down 4 things each. And I have special pens and little stick-on labels and things. That's 120 ideas. Some of them will be repeats. That's a
uh-huh.
lot of ideas I suddenly got on paper. So things like, well, when someone goes to the toilet and their phone rings, you will answer it for them. Right? So this is non-judgmental. So people come up with their own ideas. if you go to the printer and find the printer isn't working properly, you will report it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you use the meeting room, you will tidy it up at the end immediately after you use it. Don't leave it for someone else. So people come up with their own ideas, lots of repeats.
Uh-huh.
What's nice about this is, as I said, there's a long process of this. It's not as simple as that. It takes a few
Sure,
hours.
of course.
But people come up with their own stuff. They know.
Uh-huh.
They know in their heart, honestly, in their heart, they know what makes a good team. And one way of doing it is allowing them the opportunity to put forward their ideas of how we will work together. It's not that there will be disagreements, there will be, but I do have a process for that. I should say I didn't make it up, but I do have a process I've used and elaborated, which allows people to come to their own conclusions. And
Uh-huh.
that's a methodology that I used. And I should say that when people put up certain things, you are able to, as the facilitator, you can question them a little bit about
Uh-huh.
these things. Yeah,
I
what would
love
that
it.
actually be? Because as you'll expect, some people say things like, "Oh, people would be kind to each other," and I have to say the rules.
What that
We
means.
make a joke out of it. The rules of this game are. It has to be something I can actually see. I was the researcher. I came in and looked around. What did I actually see to be able to report people were being kind? What does that mean? So it's hard work to be very specific. But at the end of it, people have their own things about what they expect. So that was one method I used.
Uh-huh.
And
I love it. It's very good.
and that's a great technique. I'm happy to share it with you. As I said, I didn't invent it, but I have used it an awful lot.
No,
I don't
it's
know where
good
it came
because it has also this psychological background that they sell themselves, so they take more accountability because they come up with these ideas instead of you telling them, right?
from. Oh,
So
I could just tell them. I
yes,
could
but it
just
won't be
tell
that
them.
effective because no many people don't like to be told, what to do.
No.
But if they
And
come
and
up
they're
with these
adults.
ideas, right? Yeah,
They're
it's much
adults. They're
better.
adults. But I do make a joke at the end because, as I said, it goes for some hours. It's fun and it's they get the groups and it's entertaining. And we have walls. I call it the great wall of ideas or the great wall of pain sometimes. But I do make a joke at the end that I will come back in 12 months.
Uh,
I've taken photos of all of this. You have come up with these ideas. You have grouped them under particular headings and put them into groups and rearranged them and worked out exactly what they mean and edited them as necessary. I will come back in 12 months, and I tell you what, I'm going to be there again with my little binoculars, looking through the cupboard to find out just how you're going. And I think people understand what that means is it's all very well to have ideas. You actually now have to do them.
mhm,
So without the implementation, this is of no value. It's been a fun morning. So that's
totally.
one technique.
Very well. Thank you. I love
Now,
it. I love it. Yes, Mark?
I am going to say something else. However, there is a time when all managers, supervisors, leaders, friends, and parents, you might be the chairperson of your local community action group. There are times when you do have to. I
Mhm.
call it stepping up to the plate, which I think is an American baseball term, but you have to step up to the plate and actually say things to people which can be not well received.
Uh-huh.
Uh, no parent likes to tell their kids to stop doing it or you won't get pocket money. No one wants to do that. No kid likes to being told that either. And no parent likes when the kids continue to be rude and you do take away their pocket money. No one wants to do that. But
Sure.
sometimes any parent who's listening to this will know sometimes, I'm sorry, you threatened them. If they continue to be rude, you would take away pocket money. Now you have to do it.
Mm,
And it's
interesting.
horrible.
Yeah, it's good point. It's good point. It's a balance. Yeah, you want to give them accountability, but you also want them to see, okay, and sometimes. it just doesn't work, if everybody speaks up.
Well, the job is to make sure whatever rule you've invoked is actually fair and reasonable too.
Uh-huh.
Because I do know that sometimes as parents, as managers or whatever, we do invoke rules. We say, if you continue to be late to work, you will be docked pay, right?
Mm, uh-huh.
Or I'll treat it as a very serious matter and it will be a more formal disciplinary or counseling process.
Mm,
Once you've said that, you better make sure it's fair and reasonable, because if the person continues to do the wrong thing, then you have to act. So you
uh-huh,
better make
uh-huh.
sure it's a fair thing in the first place.
Sure, sure, definitely. It has to be mindful in that
Yeah.
sense of making the
If you
rules.
muck
Uh-huh.
if you muck up, you're not having Christmas ever again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you
Well,
have to be careful. Uh, already 30 minutes, Mark. It's the end of the interview. I just wanted to ask you: is there anything else you would like to share that we haven't covered, Mark?
wow, that's a interesting question. Well, I guess there's 1,000 things that one
Sure,
one thing I pride myself on, and I'll give myself a self promotion number here.
sure, Mark.
I've actually been there. I've done it. I know what it's like to make mistakes as a manager and look back on those experiences and say, oh, I really should have done this or I shouldn't have done that. I pride myself on being very practical and down to earth. I love people walking away from me having something they can use right there and then.
Mm,
Not the philosophy of interpersonal relationships, not the theory of this or whatever. That's fine, but I want people to be able to take away something they can use tomorrow.
mm,
That's what I'm into. Forget about this. Forget about that. Uh, People will ask me, why do you think people are rude? Why do you think some people are so difficult? You'll drive yourself crazy answering that,
uh,
because we don't really know.
uh,
We can guess, but you're not in a position to work it out. The real issue is tomorrow, you have to deal with that difficult person. And here are some things you can do right now
mm,
to keep yourself safe, but also deal with that difficult person.
mm. It's
And
the
I always say,
practicability.
yeah,
Mhm.
I would say effectively, efficiently, and ethically. There you go. There's my final words.
Thank you so much. I really love it, Mark. Thank you so much for the interview and hope to talk to you soon. Yes?
Well, you're very, very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and energy. It's appreciated.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care.
See you later.